everyone, and a warm welcome to all of you tuning into today's session, which is episode 30 of our Decoding AI in Healthcare series. I'm your host, Hetvi Shah, and the Community Engagement Manager here at MedSynapse. Today, we have an exciting and thought provoking session lined up on AI and biopharma, a field at the intersection of artificial intelligence and pharmaceutical innovation, reshaping how we approach research, drug development, and patient care. Today, we have two distinguished experts with us who bring an incredible wealth of experience. Firstly, we are honored to have David Hall, Managing Director at AKT Health. David is a visionary leader in health innovation, digital health innovation, with a particular focus on decentralized clinical trials, digital wellness, and remote patient monitoring. He has contributed significantly to digital upskilling and AI ethics integration within the clinical and corporate wellness sectors. His collaborative efforts with institutions like Harvard Medical School, Brigham and Women's Health reflects his commitment to pushing the boundaries of healthcare technology. So, welcome, David, and it is a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and pleasure to be here, Hedvig.
Thank you. Likewise. And joining him is Dr. Dipu Patel, a digital health consultant and AI entrepreneur. Dr. Dipu has extensive experience in leveraging digital transformation and AI to enhance patient care, accessibility, and outcomes. Her insights will provide an essential perspective on the real world applications of AI in the biopharma industries. So, welcome, Deepu, and it is a pleasure to have you as well.
Thank you so much, Hetvi. Thank you for that kind introduction. And it is my honor to welcome David Hall today. For our U.S. audience, it is Veterans Day today. David is a veteran, and so happy Veterans Day to David and all the veterans who serve our country so courageously. So thank you, David, for taking time on this day, and we honor you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Dipu. The Harvard-Columbia game yesterday, I was honored the hat here. So thank you very much, and to all the other veterans out there in the U.S., thank you for your service as well. Thank you.
Well, it's very nice to have someone who is actually in my neck of the woods. So David and I are both kind of local to the Boston area. But we'll dive right into this very intriguing and I would say evolving area of biopharma and life sciences. And so we'll dive right in with the first meaty question. How is AI currently being leveraged in the biopharma industry to streamline the drug discovery and development process?
Yeah, thank you, Dipu. Pleasure to be here. Yeah, we're hearing a lot these days about drug discovery and in several weeks, several months versus years. There's quite a bit beyond speeding up target identification and molecular simulations. Really want to emphasize also AI's role in de-risking drug candidates earlier in the pipeline. So we know who should be in the trials, know what their background is, who shouldn't be in. We know that AI can analyze preclinical data, historical trial outcomes, flag compounds with higher likelihood of success, and we can minimize costly failures in later stages. So we like to say we can safely fail fast, especially in rare diseases and in niche markets where there are fewer patients and typically a higher risk.
You bring up a couple of good points. The failing safely, and that's something that we typically think of in the simulation world. But this is really allowing us to not only expedite that pipeline, but also allowing us to do so safely, which is an endeavor. I guess we didn't have that option. There was a lot of, failing fast, I guess, fast for a biopharma life cycle. But it's really helping us meet some of these challenges from rare disease, but also chronic diseases, right? We've talked about how chronic diseases are being impacted in these areas as well. And so as we move forward, what are some of the challenges facing the integration of AI into clinical trials? Patient recruitment, and you touched on that just briefly, but data integrity, these are all things that we're grappling with. And having been to some of the AKT hosted seminars, we dive really deep into these issues because they are large issues. But as we look at what data validity looks like, how to really select patients for these clinical trials, that whole area of clinical research is shifting, and there's a paradigm shift that's happening, how we approach those.
Yeah, I agree. And as you mentioned, the physical events that we have here in Cambridge, greater Boston area, Kendall, MIT area, I mean, we're surrounded by hundreds of life science, pharma, biotech companies here. And, we wanted to create a forum where, pharma leaders could share their real life experiences and real world, applications. And that's really, what this is about, so that we can look at, there's so many different aspects now, so many different angles, such as ethical considerations, moral considerations, regulatory, technological, safety, privacy, security. So this goes on, and the acceleration is accelerating, as we talked about before, and that's exactly what we wanted to do, because when you bring in the emerging technologies, everyone wants to know, how can we do this safely, securely, privately, and what positive impact is it, going to really improve patient care delivery outcomes? Is it going to improve clinical trials? If so, where? And what is the ROI, the return on investment, the ROE, the return on engagement? So these are a lot of the things that we're hearing from pharma leaders every day, and also at these events that they are discussing, how to overcome these barriers of adoption. Where exactly do I want to place these emerging technologies, and where can I do it safely, and what's going to be the outcome?
Yeah. The other space, you mentioned a few spaces, but the space of genomics and how it is impacting patient selection in the clinical trial process is also being looked at and vetted, because I think we're closer now than ever to the concept of personalized medicine, to the actual delivery of personalized medicine, because of AI and the algorithms that we are developing through the data that we have. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. I agree. There's so much there as well. If you've seen some of these charts about the types of data we're bringing in, kind of just when someone thinks, okay, I've kind of got it. Okay, we have 10 more sources of data we can bring in. As you mentioned, genomics. Most people had kind of, gotten their head around, okay, we're going to integrate EHR, EMR, which is difficult in its own right with interoperability. But yes, we have genomics. We have so many different other sources of data, especially now hospitals without walls, home health care, so many things we can monitor, so many sources of data, and we do need more data. So we're kind of, actually, it
Isn't
seems
that
like we have a lot of data, but we're kind of running out of data.
Yeah. I often I'm sure you've seen this this graphic of the iceberg, where we look at evidence-based medicine, where you have the above the water, right? And we look at the randomized control trials as the top of our and the gold standard that we look at. But then you have this underneath the surface of the water, all of this data, and how that's going to impact what that tip of the iceberg looks like, and how it's changing what randomized controlled trials look like, and whether we may or may not need them in the future, because we will have the pinpointed and precise data for each individual to guide us on a lot of our decisions.
Yes, I agree. And, now taking those different silos of data, we're recombining,
Yep.
synthesizing. Everybody's looking for new insights. So we can add in, these other sources of data, these other data sets. We're going to gain new prescriptive and predictive, insights, modeling, prescriptive modeling, what should I do? What can I do? And then predictive modeling, what will happen? So we can now begin to do those types of modeling, and it's very, very powerful.
So on that note, can you share some examples where AI has been instrumental in accelerating clinical trials during patient selection and enrollment?
Yeah, absolutely. We're diverse, inclusive, equitable organization. So we're continuously looking for new ways to be more inclusive, to be more diverse. AI is being used in a lot of ways that had not been anticipated. So now we're seeing with the breakdown of silos, where it's from R&D to clinical trials to even commercialization. So we're gaining insights. Maybe we're gaining insights from that clinical trial that goes into developing new drugs, like say Novo Nordisk and obesity drugs. They gained insights from their clinical trials. Then they began, this is a well-known case. They began developing new drugs from those insights. And so we can gain a lot with AI, a lot of insights, patient recruitment, again, diverse patient recruitment. We can speed up recruitment times. As I mentioned, we can make sure that we have, the right patients in there, make sure AI is being used to maybe flag those who may be looking to drop out of the trial. Maybe they need a phone call. Maybe they need some other way of communicating with them, contacting them. And now bringing in digital health technologies, we have to build the awareness.
So as we continue this conversation, we start looking forward, thinking about how AI can support biopharma companies in predicting patient responses to therapies. And I think you started touching on this, especially in the adverse effects of early stages, as you were speaking about the areas where we can impact patient enrollment and engagement in trials. One of the things I envision in the future is that at any given point, every human is going to be part of some sort of a trial in the future, because we are going to want our own data, the precisionness of our data for decision making, so that our care providers would have that information, right? So I'm not saying clinical trial in the traditional way that we look at it, but the future is that I really would like to have my genome kind of mapped, and would need to know some of the biomarkers that are going to lead to perhaps some preventive health outcomes in the future for myself. And so I look at it as clinical trial, but it's not really clinical trial in the traditional sense of how we have historically looked at it. So the question is predicting patient responses to therapies and understanding them in an early manner. And I think you tell me what your vision for that is, because my vision is that I think we're all going to be in some sort of a study at some given point in the future.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree. I was watching one of my favorites, Peter Diamandis, yesterday at Silicon Valley. And, he's kind of spearheading this complete evaluation MRI and just gaining, gigabytes and gigabytes of data, and they analyze that data. So I think we'll see more and more of that. Of course, it's all about personalization, customization, individualization, precision healthcare. We'll look back, probably 10 years from now at the shotgun approach, and it'll be just unfathomable. Everybody took the same pill, for the same thing. It's just, what? So yeah, it's going to be based on, your genes, your genomics, and there are a number of databases. I was in Asia for 12 years, Europe for several years, There are genomic databases in the continent of Africa, throughout Asia, Southeast Asia, for different ethnicities. And I think we'll see more and more of that. Sure.
Absolutely. So as we pivot in terms of, we have to talk about the regulatory aspects of this, right? How do regulatory bodies play, what role do they play in the adoption of AI in clinical trials? And how can companies or folks who are looking to implement AI into their trials, what are some of the considerations that they should think about up front?
Yeah, I think, the FDA has been, out front of this. So I commend them on their efforts. We've seen, we've gone from maybe 5 AI-powered medical devices to now close to 1,000, about 950. Just bringing, and also, everyone's kind of learning. We went from, SaaS, software as a service, to the digital era, and then now moving into the metaverse. So everyone is kind of co-creating, learning at the same time. So bringing the FDA in early, building awareness with the FDA about these devices and about the AI algorithms that you are using, because it's really about co-creating. So they're coming in and they're, building awareness. We're building awareness, patients, doctors, everyone is kind of doing this at the same time. However, I think they've made great strides in providing the guidance that we need. And there's still a lot more to be done, of course, because these technologies are moving so quickly. There's a quote I love, the greatest failure of humankind is not being able to grasp the concept of exponential growth. A lot of people think, the future, it's like, okay, I went through a lot of ups and downs. I kind of know, the future is going to be kind of like the past, but a little bit faster, but they don't realize it's going to be much, much faster.
Yes. Yeah. And it is on us to keep up with that growth, right? Or as much as possible. Obviously, we can't do it as a single entity, but it is, and this is why one of the things I really enjoy when I attend the in-person events at AKT Health is that the diversity of the viewpoints and who is focusing on what niche is, and all of us are needed because we bring a lens to each aspect of this field. And it's really nice to engage and find those, dots, the connections in the matrix of what we're all kind of doing, but then it's all at the end going to help an outcome or help an engagement strategy or help a patient at the end of the day. And I agree with you. I commend the FDA at the pace at which they've kept up with this, because we historically have thought of regulatory bodies as kind of being behind and kind of fighting the innovation, the spirit of innovation. I think they've really done a nice job. There were some bumps in the beginning, but I think, I wouldn't be surprised if we reached over 1,000 by the end of the year in terms of the approved algorithms, and they've done a really good job of collaborating with industry partners to say, we need help in this part, we need your help in this part, and let's work together, and how we can grow this space for all involved and for the patients that we care for.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And, one just to add to that, we're going through SAMD, software as a medical device approval, FDA and FDA equivalent in a number of countries. So one way we can, kind of overcome this or kind of speed things up, the platform is approved. So all the data from we can integrate dozens of devices. We integrate about 15 now, glucose monitoring, ECG, et cetera. However, the platform is what is approved, is FDA approved. And then those devices can then be integrated from dozens to hundreds of different sources. So that's one way that we can move quicker.
So that actually parlays nicely into the next question I have, is about data sets, right? We are using AI. How is AI helping biopharma kind of manage the massive data sets that are generated from trials? And then how is this data being used and leveraged for patient care.
Yeah, it is definitely allowing, biopharma companies to efficiently manage, analyze large data sets. You're able to create real-time insights. And these can be instrumental in refining dosing regimens, patient selection, as we talked about, and other, therapeutic approaches. So by extracting patterns from the data, AI is helping to optimize trial processes and informs decision, leads to more effective patient-centered treatments.
Yeah, the predictive part of it, and I think one example that our audience will be familiar with is sepsis. Sepsis is one of the older ones now that we look at. The predictive part of these algorithms in terms of not only onset of sepsis, but like the ability to say you have a 80% chance of going into sepsis based on your vital signs, and then as a clinician being able to say, great, we're going to start antibiotics now rather than 3 hours later. That alone is a game changer, right? And so we're seeing these models being used more and more. Now, they are not all perfect. And I think I think everyone I've ever talked to in this space has said the human part of it is even more crucial. We do have to make decisions as part of these algorithms. You don't just let them kind of run on their own, but that gives us the ability to deepen our understanding as why and how these trials are so important, and having an understanding from the very beginning of a trial and the selection process of a patient, and how that data was not only extracted from a diverse data set, but then also applied to the patient. And so we're kind of relearning what we learned in school around statistics and clinical trial management, and how we're applying it in a different way. I would say in a more efficient way also.
Yeah, I mean, this has been done right, for decades, really. We've had a lot of these. We've had business intelligence. We've had, these types of processes. We've had algorithms for thousands of years. So, but now it's just the converging technologies that make it possible.
Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. So as we move, I always like to ask the ethical piece of this, of every AI-driven algorithm or tool, is that what are the ethical concerns that these AI-driven clinical decision-making tools make in the context of trials, right? Like we touched on data privacy and informed consent. In fact, we talked about for quite a while at one of the in-person events that we attended. What are some ethical concerns that you're hearing in this landscape, in this context?
Yeah, that's a pretty big area where I think, humans, AI is, let's say, the kind of the mirror to, to ourselves, what it means, us defining what it means to be human. So, teaching the AI ethics, we need to, make sure that we know ourselves, that we're able, to define what that means. So there are a number of considerations, patients, as you mentioned, patients fully understanding how their data will be used, how AI will influence their care. A lot of the doctors that we talk to on a daily, weekly basis say, they want to know, they're definitely open. So, just kind of go back the past few years, there are a number of surveys post-COVID that, and probably of course, as a result of COVID, both on the doctor's side and the patient side, surveys showing, 70, 80, 90% acceptance rate, doctors saying, yeah, I get it. I see AI is going to improve. It's going to augment me as a doctor. It's going to improve the care delivery that that I'm providing. However, I want to know what went into as a doctor, what went into the decision-making process.
Right.
How is the AI algorithm coming up with the answer? Not necessarily, I mean, we do have some doctors, programming in Python or R. However, most of them, they want to know the algorithm. How did AI come up with this, decision? And we've seen, yeah, right. How did it come up with it? And we've seen a lot of, failures as well. We had, Babylon decision-making tool. We worked with those guys over in Asia years ago. And they couldn't really quite find their niche for, how are we going to actually use this decision-making support? They went IPO, several billion-dollar IPO, all the way down to zero. So how are these decision-making support tools going to be used? And just knowing how they work. So building the awareness. We've been working on that for about 5 years through programs, working with doctors, just, to build that awareness, and with patients as well.
Yeah, and it's also important for all of the clinicians to understand that it's not a one and done. Like each algorithm and each tool will have its own ethical considerations that you'll have to ask those questions with intent. And I think that learning curve is a continuous learning curve. It's not just I saw this one and now I know what to look for and ask for. It's got to be an iterative process. At least for right now, until we come up with a framework that we can think about. And there are several that are out there that are proposed. None of them are actually being fully accepted, right? Like, because we're still, as a community, we're still going through the learning process of what these frameworks are going to end up looking like. And and that leads to the kind of the tail end, the product piece of it, which is the post-market surveillance of these products, right? And the impact that they're having on patient safety and drug efficacy. So I think you had mentioned, was it the GLP-1s that you had mentioned earlier, David, and how we came up, we're starting to learn and see some of the downstream post-market implications of this. The GLP-1s were originally designed to treat diabetes, not specifically obesity, although we can see that they go hand in hand. Now we're starting to see some interesting data from this drug that was designed not fully with AI, but definitely partially with AI at the helm. Can you speak to some of that information and data, the post-market surveillance of these biopharma products?
Yeah, absolutely. It's everything is becoming like flipped. We call flipped, right? In universities, flipped campus, meaning preview. We have flipped surgeries, pre-surgery, intra-surgery, pre-op, intra-op, post-op. So what's being done before, what's being done during, what's being done after. So as I had mentioned before, R&D to clinical to commercial. So the impact that this is having now, post-market, we're able to continue to surveil. We can analyze that real-world data to detect safety signals early. We can continuously monitor patient outcomes and adverse reactions, on a continuous basis. It allows companies to, they can act promptly. They can have near real-time data and act on those issues very, very quickly. And that will improve patient safety. It will optimize drug efficacy over time.
Absolutely. And I think the questions we'll ask will be slightly different than the historical questions we've asked in a post-market surveillance. And this is where the branches of remote patient monitoring come in, right? We can follow these patients even beyond what we would typically call the post-surveillance clinical trial period, right? Depending on what it is, sometimes we'll monitor the patient in 6 months post-trial, sometimes a year, sometimes 5 years. But there is a sense of like, maybe we can follow them longer because we now have the ability to do so. And do so efficiently without burdening the patient with lengthy visits and transportation costs and all of this kind of stuff. So I for one am very excited about that. Go ahead.
It's, yeah, as you mentioned with the transportation, it's ESG as well. So it's, environmentally friendly. You don't have to, drive. Some people drive an hour, 2 hours, go to the parking garage, get a parking space, go and visit. Now that can be done. Hospital without walls, home healthcare, things like this. And we were working on that, way back in the 90s. I was a lobbyist working to gain reimbursement for home healthcare. So people didn't need to go into a hospice if they didn't have to. They could have a home health nurse for maybe a year or several extra years. So we were kind of starting to do that. We just didn't have, the monitoring was done physically by like a home healthcare aide. Now we can do that monitoring, continuously. And it's good for everybody. It's
absolutely. So we've talked about what all the good and the hopeful aspects of AI in clinical trials. What do you see as the current limitations of AI in clinical trials, and then some of the, I guess, the significant opportunities we can see that we haven't seen yet or come to fruition?
So data standardization always comes up. We're looking to address that in a number of ways. I mean, we layer in not only AI, but blockchain as well.
Blockchain.
Blockchain for, transparency. There is, let's see. AI is becoming much better at handling unstructured data. So this could be voice, video, clinical notes.
Notes. I was going to say soap notes are big.
Right. So I think this is a big potential for growth. And as you mentioned, we continue to expand decentralized clinical trials. There has been a lot of talk, what exactly does that mean? Some people will say every trial is decentralized in some way. Others will say, no trial is, there have not been many that are 100% yet decentralized, most hybrid. But technically everyone, you're getting some data from somewhere. So it's decentralized in some way. We'll continue to integrate, IoMT, Internet of Medical Things, or IoT devices.
IoT, And I agree with you. I think the more we learn, the more technology evolves, the better we'll get at understanding and integrating. I think what is very interesting for me as a clinician and as an educator is I'm really on my toes all the time, learning something new, and to me that's very exciting because this the concept of lifelong learning is something that has been ingrained in medical professionals from the very beginning, and I think this is really exciting and not the usual lifelong learning that we look at. And so for me, it has been a very exciting time to learn all these niche areas, and then kind of, I don't, like, not that I need to dive deep in every single aspect of it, but to understand it enough to say, okay, educating that next generation so that we're understanding it enough to ask the in-depth questions when it comes to utilizing them and for our patients. Is really the aspect that I truly enjoy learning this space. And you're right, I'm not a coder. I always tell people that I was like, I don't know Python, but I know what questions to ask, and I think that's as important.
That's very, very important. The prompts, knowing what questions to ask, I think it's that's key. I think that's key. Just knowing what questions to ask.
Well, So I'm going to pivot actually to some audience questions. Our audience has been very active asking questions. So I'll just dive into a few that I have here. It says, what future trends in AI and biopharma should clinicians prepare for?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, they now really need to become all things to all people. We want to do that in a way that's what I was going to touch upon. We want to do that in a way that doesn't cause additional some people say burnout. The doctors we work with like to say force out. They say we're not burning out, we're being forced out. So we want to do it. I mean, we're a change management organization. I know Professor Cotter at Harvard Business School, I've known for a long, long time, the kind of the change management guru, father of change management. And so we want to do it in a way. He wrote a book, Accelerate.
Yeah.
So where you have business as usual on the left, you're innovating on the right. So I think we want to do that in healthcare systems with doctors, where we're not adding more complexity and more load onto the doctors, but we're able to still innovate on one side without just like putting everything on them, where they've got their job to be done, as Christian Claytonson calls it. Here it's taking care of patients. So we don't want to force that onto the doctors.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it is a balance, and I think for a while we're still figuring it out. I really think, and I would say in terms of preparing clinicians, I think having a little bit of openness and curiosity about what these tools can do for you, much like anything that you learn new, there's a learning curve for it, and be patient with yourself as you learn what these tools are going to do for you and how you can leverage them.
I agree. It begins with the mindset. In our program we developed about 5 years ago has mindset at the center, because you really cannot do anything without, as you mentioned, Dipu, the curiosity, the desire. So you need to have that mindset, that curious mindset first of all. And that is key. And then you have the digital health, literacy, you have all of the other things that go into that. But you first have to begin with the mindset.
Right. You have to be willing to learn. I think
yes, it is. As you
it's
mentioned, lifelong
exhausting.
learning.
Don't get me wrong. Yeah, it's exhausting to do something new on top of, your existing job, right? And the weight that comes with the existing job. So, but the hope is that these tools are going to make your jobs a little bit easier down the line. So, so it's worth you putting in the time now so that you can see the benefits downstream.
Yeah, that's the goal. More face time with patients, what doctors are trained to do, what they want to do. They're going to have more face time. They're going to have more time off. They're going to have more free time. And, this is going to make, I'm kind of the eternal optimist. It's going to make life better for everyone.
For everyone. Yeah, I would agree, I think. And we have a while to get there, but it's gonna, I think we have the ability to get there. So the next question from our audience is, what are the best practices for training healthcare teams to use AI tools effectively? I think this speaks to the heart of your change management practice.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the change management comes in. The mindset, as I mentioned, we include different things like the design thinking mindset, exponential thinking. You have the 6 Ds of exponential thinking, disruption, democratization, dematerialization, demonetization, things like that. Things are becoming smaller and smaller. So we have to think differently when we move to a new medium, as I mentioned, from like say SaaS to digital world to next metaverse. How we interact is going to be different. So we do have to kind of keep up, be all things to all people. There's a prediction that by the end of the decade, digital skills will become just as important, or perhaps even more important than medical skills. And I get a lot of pushback on this. People just cannot fathom. Before it was like, okay, I got a degree, I was good for 40 or 50 years. That was it. And now that's changing very rapidly.
Definitely. And I would agree with you. I don't know if I would go as far as more important, but I definitely think that if you are not savvy with the digital skills, you're going to get left behind in terms
Mhm.
of the quality of the care that will then be expected by our patients. Because as much as we're driving this, our patients are also starting to demand that we be savvy with these tools. So
Yeah.
it is important that we pivot. There's as kind of to what you were saying about like how to go about making sure that you're learning these. One of the things I say, what got us here won't get us there, because what we had, the
Uh-huh.
tools we had to get
Exactly.
us here, were great and they were innovative in their own right. But if we want to go forward, now we have a whole set of new tools, some that we can keep bringing along, but some that we have to kind of do away with.
Yeah.
I from a educator and a clinical standpoint, that I look at the utility of a physical exam. I'm not saying that it's not
Mhm.
necessary, but I also think that the data I get on most traditional physical exams is minimal. But
Mhm.
will the tools that we are designing today change how we fundamentally examine a patient so that we can glean higher quality data from the physical exam? I'm not saying we should do
Mhm.
away with it. The physical touch of an exam is very important in patient care.
Mhm.
But I mean, you could ask anyone who is in clinical practice. The physical exam adds very little. It's the history that's really going to tell you about 80 to 90% of what
Mm.
you think the diagnosis is going to be. So, which is part of the
Mhm.
success of telehealth, right? The fact that the physical exam is kind of very rudimentary in through the screen, but then how do we leverage the screen for the future of the physical exam? And I think we're starting to tackle those barriers, as we move forward. So we really have to
Mhm.
rethink, to your point around innovative thinking and design thinking. Like, yeah, the physical exam, maybe head to toe, the way we were traditionally taught it, may not be the thing that takes us to the next phase of what medical digital practice will look like in the future.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And our doctor said, "Wow, I never thought I would ever need something like that." But they said, when I go into my clinic, I go into my hospital, I'm thinking of the process, as you mentioned, Deepa. I'm thinking of the process, and in how I might make what's the pain, first of all, empathizing,
Right.
what's the pain going through that, and then how I might propose a solution. They say, I'm thinking completely different
Different.
about that process. And again, this is
That's right.
augmenting the doctors, not replacing them. We say
Right.
AI won't replace doctors, but doctors with AI will replace doctors without. So just
Yeah.
want to emphasize that.
Yeah. Well, so the final question I have is, what specific pharmaceutical activities are implemented and practiced using digital AI? I know we've talked in generalities. Are there specific trials that you are pharmaceutical activities that you can mention, or are at liberty to mention? Sometimes you can't mention them.
Yeah, some of the activities, can you say that one more time, please?
Specific pharmaceutical activities, which I assume they mean clinical trials that are in
Okay.
phase now, is how I would say that, and practiced using digital AI. So I guess tools
Yeah.
that have been implemented, that you are aware of.
Yes, I mean, yes, certain specialties kind of lend themselves more to earlier
Yeah.
adoption, depending on, as I mentioned, with the 6 degrees or the 6 degrees of exponential thinking. Devices are every day becoming smaller and smaller. Now we're down to maybe it was thousands, hundreds of dollars, maybe just, a few dollars. We also work
Right.
in a lot of underserved areas around the world, so there are additional devices, every day that we're able to use that maybe only cost just, a few dollars. But there are certain,
Right.
right, specialties, if I can monitor heart glucose, some specialties, say, the brain or something like that,
I was gonna say neurology is a big one, big space.
neurology,
Yeah.
yes, it may be a little more difficult, but we're seeing advances in those areas as well. And with handheld, and also we've got handheld sonograms, things like this becoming
Yeah.
less and less expensive, smaller and smaller, we're able to use those. So you could literally, as you mentioned, you could do an exam. Very soon you'll be able to do, maybe a full body, exam with these devices at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the aspects of how this is impacting and I'm not sure who in the audience asked that question, but I would encourage you to think about some of the things that David pointed out they fall under the larger umbrella of digital health, where AI and all EHRs and all of these other technologies fall under. And so AI, when we talk about AI itself is a very broad field, right? And sometimes we're talking about algorithmic and machine learning and deep learning development. Sometimes we're talking about generative AI, and sometimes we're talking about natural language processing. We're kind of meshing all of these things together to use the term AI very colloquially in this space. But there's a lot of segmentation in terms of where remote patient monitoring can be applied, where generative AI can be applied, where natural language processing can be applied. So they all kind of come together, but they also are distinct fields in and of themselves in this budding area that we are now finally seeing it. And by the way, this is not a new field. It's been in existence for a number of decades. It's just that now we are finding ourselves where the technology has caught up with the math and allows us to then use these tools in a new way. Again, going back to what got us here isn't going to get us there. So we're going to have to use these tools in a new way as technology allows us to, and leverage them for a bit better patient care. I'll give you the last word, David, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I think companies are looking into how they can innovate. They're creating either some types of innovation centers of excellence. We visited the Pfizer Fire Lab. They are testing a number of medical devices. Sanofi spoke at our event. They came out wanting to be the leaders in AI. So I think we're seeing many different approaches to innovation, either creating their own business units, acquiring companies, investing in digital health technology companies. So this is very exciting, and I think companies are really stepping up and getting involved with these technologies, and so I think it's very very promising.
Great. Well, on that note, thank you, David, so much for taking time on a Monday morning on a holiday for us here in
wonderful.
the US.
I love
it. Appreciate it. Happy Veterans Day again to you and all the servicemen and women who serve us. And I'll hand it back to Hedvig to close us out.
Thank you so much. It was an honor. Thank you, Dipu.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us on a holiday, David. I did not know it was a holiday out there.
Thank you.
So
wonderful, Hedvig.
Yeah, so as we end today's session, I would like to thank our speakers, David and Dipu, for sharing their expertise and transformative ideas. And let me tell you that your insights into the application of AI in biopharma and its potential to revolutionize patient care have been truly inspiring. And a big thank you to our audience for joining us and engaging with in today's session. And before we wrap up, my final thoughts would be, as you all might know fraud now, that we have an AI Global Summit coming up on the 14th and 15th of December. And we are just 4 days away to grab your early bird discounts. So yes, so hurry up and register now for the summit. Yeah, that's it. So until next time, keep innovating, keep advancing the healthcare with AI. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Bye-bye.